Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Body Wisdom Podcast. I'm Tami Bulmash, and today I'm going to be speaking with Lauren Hill. Lauren has been a certified Alexander Technique teacher since 2003 and has continued her training with postgraduate courses given by Jessica Wolf and John Nichols. She offers private Alexander Technique lessons from her studio in St. Paul, Minnesota, and teaches group classes at St. Paul Community Education. Lauren also assists at the Minnesota Center for the Alexander Technique, an Alexander Technique training program in Minneapolis. She is on the faculty of an annual residential Alexander Technique retreat and was previously a board member for the American Society for the Alexander Technique. In addition to teaching the Alexander Technique, Lauren is an editor and writer for the Body Wisdom publication on the platform Medium. This publication brings together ideas about the mind-body connection in terms of health, well-being, personal development, optimal functioning, and performance. I'm really excited to have Lauren with us today because the last time we spoke, Lauren was actually on the other side interviewing me, and I'm really happy to have her here now so that I can talk with her because Lauren is one of my favorite writers and also members of the Alexander Technique community. Lauren, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
How are things in Minneapolis these days?
Oh, it's cooled down a little bit. Fall is coming. Winter is soon on its way.
So what is cool for you? What is the temp?
Cool. It's been, we've had a kind of a warm August. It was in the 80s and 90s, and all of a sudden it was a high of 60 last week.
Oh, high of 60. Okay.
Yeah.
That's like a dream temperature here in Florida where it feels like 105 every day. So I'm waiting for the fall and excited for it to come. So, Lauren, as I mentioned before, I have been a fan of your writing for a really long time, and this particular article is one of my favorites. And so I wanted to go ahead and talk about this article of yours that I really love. And the title of the article is Be Quick, But Don't Hurry: How to Harness Your Mind-Muscle Connection. So, Lauren, at first glance, the title seems to describe the same thing, namely being quick and hurrying. However, at second glance, you advise to be quick yet not to hurry. So can you explain the difference between being quick and hurrying?
Yeah, I think a very simple way of thinking about it is when you're talking about being quick, it's really describing the speed of any movement. So if you're walking from one end of the block to the other, you can walk quickly or you could walk slowly. Or another example, if you're folding your laundry, you can fold your laundry quickly or you can fold your laundry slowly. It just has to do with how fast or slow you're doing the movement. Mm-hmm. And hurry has to do with what you're thinking. It has to do with your mindset, in particular around time. And when we talk about a hurrying mindset, it's usually a mindset that's a bit stressful around time. So thoughts such as, I don't have time, I don't have enough time, pretty familiar to a lot of people. Yes. As opposed to, you could have a different type of thought like, I have time or I have enough time. That's different.
Absolutely. I can certainly relate to that feeling of I don't have enough time. I think a lot of people can relate to that. And in your article, you also gave an example where you could sense that a woman was hurrying, and you mentioned that it was written all over her movements. Could you just describe to our listeners some of the things that you noticed when someone was hurrying, or maybe you could even say rushing?
Yeah. So rushing and hurrying are, I would say interchangeable terms. So if we go back to what I just said, that describing somebody moving quickly has to do with the speed of their movement, and the hurrying has to do, or rushing has to do with their mindset. That mindset will infect their movement and affect the quality of their movement. So what I saw in this woman as she walked behind me, I was blow drying my hair and I could see her in the mirror. She was walking quite quickly into the locker room, but she looked very tense in her neck and shoulders. Even her face looked tense. Mm-hmm. And when she got into the locker area, she started unloading her backpack and putting stuff in the locker and trying to get dressed. And, she was moving quickly, but she was being very clumsy, dropping things all over the place. probably because she was in a hurry. And
Yeah.
just another, she was also making all kinds of noises, sighing and this and that, which you often hear actually quite a bit in the locker room, which is quite humorous. And what's interesting about the fact that this woman was hurrying and dropping stuff, I mean, she probably would have gotten done more quickly had she not been in such a hurry, because she had to stop and pick things up. She kept dropping, and that wasted her time.
Oh, I relate to that last part so much. I know when there was a time that I was trying to take a bunch of grocery bags out of the car. And so rather than make several trips, I thought, I'm going to be quick. I'm going to, take 8 bags, 4 in each one. And of course, that did not work. I spilled, I dropped, and then you have the mess that you have to clean up. So the hurrying actually cost me a lot more time than
Right.
had I just taken maybe 1 bag in each hand and then gone back and forth, 4 times. That would have been a more efficient use of time. So I really love this piece because I think it underscores exactly this principle of time and how we look at time in this this mindset. And I think that most people can certainly relate to wanting to get things done quickly, but it doesn't work out the way that we anticipate. And in the article, you discuss how hurrying is a symptom of a mindset, and a mindset that says, I don't have enough time. Can you explain a bit more about that and its implications?
Yeah, so I think, for most of us, we have thoughts or self-talk about time that tend to be stressful. Again, I don't have time. I don't have enough time. I have too much on my plate. I'm never going to get this done. I mean, you could probably add 10 to that list. We're very good at that. And time itself is not stressful, but how we think about time makes it stressful. The other end of that continuum is, more, I would say, more easeful thoughts around time. So I have time, which is the simplest one, but also I have time to enjoy what I'm doing in this moment. I have plenty of time to get done what I'm doing. I can do what I'm doing now. I will have time to do the next thing when I'm finished with this. And so often I think our self-talk around time is subconscious. We're not even realizing that this kind of record is playing in our tape is playing in our head. But it is affecting the quality of your movement. It's affecting the tension in your body. And I grew up in a Western culture, and we tend to have a lot of focus on time in this culture and hurrying up. And I know other cultures relate to time differently,
Yeah.
but I'm talking from a Western cultural perspective.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think that definitely living in different parts of the world, time, being late is considered, that's just how you do it. It's almost rude to come early, but in American or Western culture, punctuality is very important. And I think that that's part of the Western culture's notion of trying to get a lot of things done, trying to, check, let's put a check to our day, all the things, the list of things that we did. And that is something that I think I've thought about also when you wrote when you published this. That was one of the first things that struck me about this piece that I really liked, because I think it also relates to the current era that we're in, where now the concept of time has sort of been turned upside down. So the things that used to be done outside of the home are now being done at home. Like adults are working from home and children are learning virtually. And this has made scheduling more challenging for a lot of people. And I know I can personally relate to thinking that I don't have enough time to get things done. And I'm going to venture a guess that many of our listeners might also be thinking the same way. And what are some ways that you can suggest for us to get out of that mindset?
Yeah, so I think 2 things come to mind. One is, first, if you have a moment when you notice that you're literally saying to yourself, I don't have enough time to get this done, to stop in that moment and realize I can switch that thought. That's a stressful thought. And I can switch that to a more, I'm going to say, easeful thought by simply saying, I have time. Even if you don't believe it, you can say it to yourself. So it becomes a habit, I think, to think about time always in a stressful way, that you don't have enough of it. And so beginning to notice that habit and interrupting it and choosing something else. And actually, the Alexander technique has a lot to do with habits. And a lot of times we think about the technique having to do with posture and physical habits, but just as much mental habits, if not more. And so this is an example of a mental habit that a lot of us have. And just the awareness of that moment when you're telling yourself something stressful, I've got too much on my plate, I don't have enough time, I have to get this done so I can get on to the next thing, is, I would say, way more than half the battle, is just that awareness. Because when you have that awareness, you have a ability then to make a choice about it. I'm going to continue to have this stressful thought, or I'm going to try a different thought. So that's my one thing. The second thing has to do with the to-do list. And I'm speaking from a female perspective,
Yes.
and a lot has been written about the female to-do list. I would be very interested to hear from our male listeners if this applies to them as well. But I think, you can relate, as most women can relate, to having a to-do list that's either in your head or it's on a piece of paper. And a lot of times that to-do list that we make for ourselves is unreasonable. And so one trick that I have that I do sometimes, I will list all my stuff either on a piece of paper or in my head, but it's easier to do it on a piece of paper, and just let myself write everything down I think I need to do today. And then just look at it and just ask yourself, how does my body feel as I look at this list? Am I beginning to feel tight? Okay. Because if it's unreasonable, there is only so much that you can actually accomplish in one day. And if you've put way more on there than is reasonable, that's going to trigger that thought that, oh my God, I don't have enough time. And you probably don't, and that's stressful. And how do we respond to stress? We all know how we respond to stress. We get tight, usually in our neck, our shoulders, and our upper back. That's where we all hold our stress, right? Most of us do. So what you can do is you can take that list you've written down, and if you are really honest with yourself, ask yourself, what things on this list absolutely have to get done today? And what are things that would really, really be nice if they got done today, or I really like to get done today? Because not all of them belong on the absolutely have to list. So if it's the end of the month, for example, the last day of the month, and I haven't paid my electricity bill yet, I would say that is an absolute, I have to do that today because I don't want my lights to get turned off, right?
Right.
Or if my dad has a doctor's appointment and I've agreed to take him to that appointment because he doesn't drive anymore, that would be, I have to do this today. But, do I need to defrost the refrigerator or the freezer? Well, I'd like to get it done today, but the world's not going to end if I don't get it done today. And so then you have these two lists, and then you can take your list of things that really would be nice to get done and meter them out. Maybe meter them out over the next 3 days and see how that feels. So that's one trick that I do, because I think a lot of times we put stuff in this have to, and it's really not a have to. It's a really would like to, but we label it as a have to. So that's another strategy.
I love that. Really sage advice. I think that's a trap that many people, including myself, fall into, of this, I have to get everything done. I am a people pleaser, so I like to respond to everyone's emails. I like to, make sure that I do all the etiquette things. And truth be told, people sometimes take days, if not weeks, to reply to me. And I don't think, poorly of them. They don't have to reply to me, exactly right after I write the message. And I think that a lot of times the things that we put on our have to list are things that can really wait. Responding to text messages, responding to emails, responding to calls. If we just take those things off the immediate list, these things that tighten, like they make me tighten when I think, oh gosh, I have to reply or I have to respond to this person. If I wait a day and that frees up an hour of my time, then I have an hour more of time that I don't have to use up. And I think that that's a really great way of framing it, is what really has to be done immediately. Like, I have to feed my children. That really has to happen.
Right.
Breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I have to do that. And so another thing in the article that I really, really enjoyed was there was a term that you mentioned that was called the mind-muscle continuum. And you wrote, where you tend to hang out habitually along the continuum over time will have a great impact on how you look and feel. Can you elaborate a bit more on what that means and how it relates to the Alexander technique?
Sure. So this mind-muscle continuum was introduced to me by Alexander teacher who's now retired from New York, named Judy Stern. And I don't know if she coined that term or if she got that from somewhere else, but Judy was the one who introduced it to me, so I will give her credit for it. And basically, if you take a piece of paper and make a horizontal line along the piece of paper, and at one end you just write the word ease, and the other end you write the word stress. And above the line you write the word mind, and underneath the line you write the word muscle. And I often do this in a workshop on stress and time with students. And we'll start with the section that says muscle, which relates to your body. And so on your piece of paper under the label ease, when you think of your body when it's at ease, you know, what kind of words come to mind to describe how you feel? If I asked you, Tami.
Calm.
Yeah.
Balance.
Right. I mean, I think of, you know, I might think of soft or relaxed. I mean, you can, if you're in a group of people, it's kind of fun to do this because you can brainstorm all kinds of words around that. Mm-hmm. And then if you go to the other end of the continuum where we have stress, when you feel stress in your body, you know, what do we feel?
Tight.
Right. Tight, tense,
stressed. Yes.
Constricted. Right. Yeah. So that's your physical kind of part of the continuum. Mm-hmm. Then if we go to the top part where we have it labeled mind, that has to do with your thinking. And with what we're talking about today, we're going to look at your thinking specifically around time. So because we're very good at having stressful thoughts around time, we can start with that. And, you know, we've already been talking about some ideas around thoughts that we have around time. I don't have enough time. Yes. Right, I have too much on my plate. I got to get this done now so I can get on to the next thing. I've got 10 things to do. And, you know, I mean, again, if you're in a group of people, it's fun to do this and you can really brainstorm a lot. Most of us have lots of phrases that belong at this stressful end of the continuum. At the other end, on the easeful end, then you can think, you know, my simple phrase that I had before was I have time. But, you know, I have time to enjoy what I'm doing in this moment. You know, I have lots of time. I'm not going to run out of time. I have plenty of time. And I actually find it helpful to brainstorm easeful thoughts around time because we often don't have a lot of them. And then, like I mentioned earlier, if you catch yourself in that habit of thinking a negative, stressful thought around time, you've done some work and come up with some phrases that you can kind of have in your pocket, so to speak, and pull them out and say, okay, I'm gonna substitute the I don't have time phrase for one of these nice phrases that I've come up with.
I love that. Yeah. That's a great idea.
Yeah. And so it's just to show you the connection between how I think and how my body responds.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think it's also underscoring another thing that we actually talked about in our last episode together, was how much of this is a choice. You know, how much choosing the language even that we surround these ideas is maybe a subconscious choice, but it's still a choice. And now you get to choose consciously, okay, I'm going to change my relationship with how I think about time, and I have these other words that I can associate with it. I have time. It's an abundance of time. It's like an affirmation in a way, a very helpful one. I really, I love that. I think this is really great advice.
I think one other thing, I often will have students who will complain that, during the day I feel tense in my shoulders or, my neck. And, often another thing you can do is when you feel that in your body, often we want to stretch or roll our shoulders or get up and move, which may not be a bad idea, but it's also, a little sign that you could check in with your thinking and say, okay, my shoulders are tight. That's okay. What am I thinking right now, in particular relating to time? Whatever I'm doing, if I'm folding the laundry or if I'm working on an email, what is my thought that I'm having right now? Is it that, oh God, I have to get this done. I only have 2 seconds to get this done, and just see if you're having a stressful thought around time and if that isn't contributing to that tightness that you're feeling in your body.
Excellent. Yeah, that's wonderful. This is really great. I'm going to think about this and definitely create a list of words that I'd like to associate with time now. Lauren, is there anything else that you'd like to share with our listeners today? You've given us, I think, really great ideas. First of all, a lot of information relating to, our thoughts about being quick versus hurrying and what actually happens, and then some tips on what to think about with that. And is there another takeaway that you'd like our listeners to have today?
Yeah, I guess you're an Alexander teacher and I'm an Alexander teacher, and one of the things that we work with a lot is teaching people to be more aware of their reactions, and that's really your habits. And the way I look at our mindset around time is that it's often what I call a secondary stimulus. So, for example, maybe you're at work and you get assigned some kind of a task by your boss. So that in itself is what we would consider a stimulus. You will react to being given that task. And it may be that you're really overjoyed because now you've been given some responsibility you've been waiting for. Or you may be really irritated that you've been given this task. Okay. But then usually that triggers a thought regarding time. Oh, I have all day to, complete this task, lots of time. Or, oh my God, there's one more thing on my plate. I'm never going to get this done. And so what's happened is that you've now created this thought around time in your head, which is another stimulus that you react to. And if it's a stressful one, we know how we react to stress. We react to stress with excess muscular tension, tightness. So you can, as we've been talking about, notice that you are creating that stimulus and you can interrupt it and change it. And, the work of the Alexander technique is really discovering lots of things about yourself. It does have to do with posture, but it really has to do with your habits more broadly. And I guess I would just tell our listeners, just be curious as you discover things about yourself. And remember that you're a work in progress. We're so hard on ourselves, I think. And it takes, if you notice how, if you start noticing your self-talk around time, and you notice how often you're telling yourself these kind of negative thoughts about I don't have time, you realize you've probably been practicing doing that for a long time, so you're good at it, right? You just need to practice something else. That's all. And I'm not saying it's not necessarily easy, but it is worth working on. Your body really will thank you for it over and over and over again. And it's been, for me, this issue around time as a stimulus has been very interesting to me because it's a very potent stimulus for me, and one that I constantly work on because of how it affects me physically in terms of my tension patterns in my body. And I also found, with a lot of my students, it's a very, very potent stimulus. So I think it's really something to be aware of, and a place that you can really work on your habits.
Absolutely. It's definitely got me thinking about a lot of things. I think that a lot of people have this very bittersweet relationship with time. and their thoughts around it. And we want more time. We actually have time, and how we think about time, and food for thought. And I think that being able to think of it differently will certainly help me in my relationship with time, and also the quality of the time that I spend with other people when I'm not hurrying in my thoughts about getting tasks done, and just re-examining my relationship with time and being more present as a result of that. I think I'm looking forward to that and getting back to you on how that goes. And
I look forward to hearing your update.
Thank you. Well, it's very fitting, especially I think these days, with trying to do so many things at once from home, like a lot of people that are working from home, and again, having to re-examine time in a different way. But anyway, this has been wonderful. And thank you so much, Lauren. And it's just so nice to talk to you again. And thank you so much for being our guest today.
You're welcome, and thanks for interviewing me. It was a pleasure.
It was a pleasure indeed.